The observation deck of Meridian Station offered a view of 3 suns burning in different colors across the void. Princess Vela stood with her 4 arms crossed, watching the cosmic display with barely contained impatience. Her skin shimmered like liquid mercury, shifting through silver and gold colors that betrayed her irritation to anyone who knew crystalline biology. Behind her, the other delegates whispered among themselves. The crystallines were known throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors, their empire built on strength and conquest. Vela herself had led the assault on the Draxian colonies, earning her reputation as the Silver Storm before her 25th solar cycle. She stood nearly 9 feet tall, her natural armor plating catching the light with each breath. And now, her father Emperor Vane had sent her here to negotiate with humans. "Your Highness," her advisor Malik approached carefully, his own metallic skin showing cautious orange tones. "The Earth delegation has arrived, finally." Vela turned from the window, her battle instincts making her assess the approaching figures instantly. 3 humans walked into the observation deck, and Vela had to resist the urge to laugh. They were so small, barely 6 feet tall, with soft flesh instead of armor, only 2 arms, and eyes that could probably barely see in low light. They looked like they would break if she breathed on them too hard. The leader stepped forward, and Vela found herself studying him more carefully. He was tall for a human, with warm bronze skin and dark hair touched with silver at the temples. He wore simple gray robes, not the formal diplomatic attire she'd expected, and carried a leather satchel that appeared worn from use. "Princess Vela," he said, his voice surprisingly deep and calm. "I am Marcus Chun, representing Earth's Council. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." He bowed, not the quick, perfunctory nod most diplomats offered, but a slow, respectful gesture that somehow didn't seem submissive. When he straightened, his dark eyes met hers without fear or challenge, just steady regard. "You may sit," Vela said, gesturing to the arranged seating. She'd expected him to take the largest chair. The one closest to her most diplomats scrambled for positions of perceived power. Instead, Marcus chose a simple seat off to the side, placing his satchel carefully beside him. The negotiations began formally. Earth wanted access to crystalline trade routes and protection for their colony worlds. In exchange, they offered technological patents, agricultural techniques, and something they called cultural exchange programs. Cultural exchange? Prince Dorian, Vela's younger brother, scoffed via the communication link. He was attending remotely from the crystalline flagship. What culture could humans possibly have worth learning? Marcus's expression didn't change, though Vela noticed his fingers briefly stilled on the datapad he'd been studying. "Every civilization has wisdom to share, Prince Dorian. Sometimes the most valuable lessons come from unexpected sources." "Pretty words from a pretty man," Dorian sneered. "But the galaxy respects strength, not philosophy." "Then perhaps the galaxy is missing out," Marcus replied quietly, and returned to his notes. The first day of negotiations went poorly. The Vrin Collective, attending as mediators, kept raising objections. The Stellar Accord representative argued that humans were too primitive to warrant crystalline protection. Through it all, Marcus remained infuriatingly calm, responding to insults with courtesy and threats with gentle logic. "Does nothing anger you?" Vela demanded during a break, unable to contain her curiosity. Marcus looked up from the small notebook he'd been writing in actual paper. She noticed, not digital. "Anger is useful in battle," he said. "But we're not in battle. We're trying to build something. Anger would only tear it down." Vela's skin flickered to pale blue, the color of confusion. In her world, everything was battle. Politics, trade, even family dinners. The idea of approaching conflict without aggression seemed impossibly naive. "Your people must think you weak," she said, not unkindly. Marcus smiled, and something in that expression made her heart beat faster. My people think I'm exactly what this mission needs. That evening, after the other delegates had retired, Vela found herself drawn back to the observation deck. She was surprised to find Marcus there, standing before one of the garden pods. Meridian Station had several biomes representing different member species environments. Marcus stood before the Earth section, a modest collection of green plants that seemed dull compared to the bioluminescent flora of other worlds. "These are called roses," Marcus said without turning around. "They've been cultivated by humans for thousands of years. Not for food or medicine, but purely for beauty." Vela approached, her footsteps silent despite her size. Up close, she could smell something sweet from the flowers. "Your people waste resources on decorations?" "We invest resources in things that feed the soul," Marcus corrected gently. He reached out to touch one of the petals with surprising tenderness. "My mother had a garden. She said that anyone who could create. Beauty was stronger than someone who could only create. Destruction. Your mother sounds like she never saw. War. She survived 3 of them." Marcus finally turned to face her, and in the soft light of the observation deck, Vela saw depths in his eyes she hadn't noticed before. That's how she knew the difference. They talked for hours that night. Marcus spoke about Earth's history, its art and music, the way humans had learned to find hope in darkness. He listened as Vela described the honor codes of crystalline warriors, the weight of imperial expectations, the loneliness of being respected but never truly known. "You're not what I expected," Vela admitted as the station's night cycle deepened around them. "Neither are you," Marcus replied. "I was told the Silver Storm was all fury and pride, but I see someone who carries her peoples, hopes, and is tired of carrying them. Alone." Something in Vela's chest tightened the feeling she didn't have words for in any language. Negotiations continued for weeks. Each day brought new obstacles as other galactic powers tried to block Earth's integration into established trade networks. And each evening, Vela found herself walking with Marcus through the station's gardens, drawn to his quiet wisdom and the way he seemed to see beyond her. Warrior exterior, Marcus never boasted about human achievements or tried to prove his worth through displays of knowledge. Instead, he asked questions, listened deeply, and offered insights that came from a perspective entirely different from her own. He taught her about Earth's philosophy of harmony, the concept of finding strength through balance rather than dominance. "In your empire," Marcus said one evening as they stood before a viewing port, "strength is measured in victories. What if strength could also be measured in what you choose not to destroy?" "Then my people would think me weak," Vela said. But her tone was thoughtful rather than dismissive. "Or they might learn a new kind of strength." Marcus's hand moved slightly, as if he wanted to reach for hers, but thought better of it. "The strongest blade isn't the one that cuts through everything, but the one that knows when to remain sheathed." On the final day of negotiations, just as the tree was being prepared for signing, Emperor Vane's holographic form appeared in the council chamber. The great emperor stood 15 feet tall in the projection, his ancient armor plating covered in the scars of 1,000 battles. "The treaty is acceptable," Vane declared, his voice like grinding stone. "But to truly seal this alliance, to show the galaxy that Crystalla and Earth are bound together, there must be a union of houses." Vela's skin flashed bright white shock. "Father, Princess Vela will marry the Earth delegate Marcus Chun. Their bond will symbolize the bond between our peoples." The chamber erupted in voices. Some delegates objected, others approved, but Vela heard none of it. She turned to Marcus, expecting to see panic or refusal in his eyes. Instead, he was looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Marcus stood slowly and bowed to Emperor Vane's image. "Your Majesty, I am honored by this proposal, but the choice belongs to Princess Vela. I would never presume to make it for her." All eyes turned to Vela. Her brother Dorian was protesting loudly through the communication link. Malik looked concerned. The other delegates waited in breathless anticipation. But Vela only saw Marcus, standing there in his simple robes, offering her a choice when he could have seized an incredible political opportunity. In that moment, she realized something that both terrified and thrilled her. "I accept," she said, her voice clear and certain. Marcus's face broke into a genuine smile, the first, truly unguarded expression she'd seen from him. "Then I am the luckiest man in the galaxy." As the chamber filled with the sounds of celebration and protest, Vela caught Marcus's eye across the room. He nodded slightly, a gesture of respect and promise. Neither of them knew that this marriage, born of political necessity, would one day be all that stood between the galaxy and annihilation. They only knew that somehow, in the gardens of Meridian Station, a warrior princess and a gentle scholar had found something neither had been looking for, a partner who saw them not as they appeared, but as they truly were. And perhaps, Vela thought, as her skin shifted to soft pink, the color of new beginnings, that was the strongest foundation any alliance could have. The crystal spires of Crystalla Prime rose like frozen lightning against the purple sky. From the balcony of the royal palace, Marcus could see the entire capital city sprawling below a metropolis of warriors, where even the architecture seemed designed for combat. Angular buildings with defensive positions, streets wide enough for military formations, and training grounds on every corner where crystalline soldiers practiced their devastating fighting techniques. It had been 3 years since the wedding, and Marcus had adapted to life on this warrior world better than anyone expected. Though adapted might be too strong a word. Persisted was perhaps more accurate. He knelt in his rooftop garden, carefully tending the earth plants he'd managed to cultivate in Crystalla's harsher environment. Tomatoes grew in modified soil, herbs flourished under adjusted light frequencies, and a small lemon tree bore fruit that tasted like home. The garden was his sanctuary, a place where he could work with his hands and think without the weight of crystalline eyes judging his every soft human action. "Still playing in the dirt, brother?" Prince Dorian's voice cut through the morning peace like a blade. Marcus didn't look up from his work, though his shoulders tensed slightly. "Good morning, Dorian. The sunrise was particularly beautiful today. Did you see it?" Dorian's metallic skin flashed irritated red as he stepped onto the balcony. At 10 feet tall with 6 arms and armor plating that could deflect plasma fire, he cut an imposing figure. His face bore the ritual scars of a warrior who had killed in personal combat, something he never let Marcus forget. "I was leading morning combat drills while you were watering flowers," Dorian sneered. "Tell me, does my sister know she married a gardener instead of a man?" Marcus finally stood, brushing soil from his simple tunic. 3 years of these insults had taught him that rising to anger only encouraged Dorian further. "Vela knows exactly who she married. Perhaps you should ask her if she's disappointed." "I don't need to ask. I can see it in her eyes every time she watches you refuse weapons training. Every time you hide in your books while real warriors defend the Empire." Dorian moved closer, using his height to loom over Marcus. "You dishonor her with your weakness. If you truly believe that," Marcus said calmly, "you wouldn't need to tell me so often." Before Dorian could respond, Vela emerged from their chambers. Her skin showed the deep bronze of contentment, and she wore the formal armor of her rank, a clear sign she had council duties today. Her 4 arms moved in the graceful, precise patterns of someone trained from birth in combat, but her expression softened when she saw Marcus. "Dorian, don't you have your own wife to bother?" she asked, moving to Marcus's side. "I was just leaving," Dorian muttered, his skin flashing embarrassed orange. "But sister, the council grows concerned. 3 years, and your human still refuses to even hold a weapon." It makes our alliance look weak. The alliance stands strong regardless of what Marcus holds, Vela replied, her tone carrying an edge of warning. Or are you questioning Father's judgment? Dorian's skin paled slightly. Questioning the Emperor was dangerous, even for a prince. He bowed stiffly and left without another word. Vela turned to Marcus, her expression apologetic. I'm sorry. He means well, in his own terrible way. He worries about you, Marcus said, gently touching one of her hands. I can't fault him for that. You're too understanding sometimes, Vela said, but she smiled. What will you do today while I sit through tedious resource allocation meetings? I thought I'd visit the city archives. There's a section on pre-imperial history I've been wanting to explore. Vela's skin flickered curious yellow. You've been spending a lot of time in the archives lately. What are you researching? Just curious about your world's past, Marcus said, and it wasn't entirely a lie. Understanding where we come from helps us know where we're going. After Vela left for her council duties, Marcus did indeed head to the archives, but not to the public sections he'd mentioned. Using credentials he'd carefully acquired over 3 years, he accessed the restricted military database in a forgotten sublevel of the ancient building. The elderly archivist, Senna, barely looked up when he entered. Her skin had faded to dull gray with age, and she seemed more interested in her data crystals than in the human scholar who occasionally requested obscure documents. Back again, Marcus-chun? She muttered. What is it today? More agricultural treaties? Actually, I was hoping to review the deep space scanning logs from the past 6 months, Marcus said casually. I'm writing a paper on resource distribution patterns. Senna waved one hand dismissively. Access Terminal 7. You know the protocols. Marcus settled at the terminal and began his real work. His fingers moved with practiced efficiency, pulling up sensor data that had nothing to do with resource distribution. Deep space anomalies, gravitational distortions, energy signatures that didn't match any known stellar phenomena. He'd been tracking these patterns for 8 months now, ever since the first whispers had appeared in the data. Most people would have dismissed them as sensor errors or natural cosmic events. But Marcus had been trained to see what others missed, and what he was seeing terrified him. Something massive was moving through the void between galaxies. Something that didn't appear in normal sensor sweeps, but left. Traces like footprints in snow that melted before anyone else could see them. He compiled his findings into an encrypted file and prepared to send it to Earth, using the quantum relay network he'd secretly installed in his garden's irrigation system. The message was disguised as agricultural data, seed distribution patterns that actually contained military intelligence. But as he encoded the message, he felt eyes on him. Marcus looked up slowly to find General Thrace standing at the entrance to the archive chamber. Thrace was ancient even by crystalline standards, nearly 400 years old. His armor plating scarred and dulled by centuries of battle. Unlike most crystalline military leaders, he didn't rely on intimidation. His power came from the sharp intelligence in his eyes and the fact that he'd survived every war the Empire had fought. Interesting reading? Thrace asked, his voice like gravel. Just research, Marcus replied, carefully closing the terminal. I find your people's history fascinating. Indeed. Thrace moved closer, his movements still fluid despite his age. I've been watching you, Marcus-chun, for 3 years now. Marcus's heart rate increased, but he kept his expression neutral. I hope I haven't been too boring to observe. On the contrary, you're quite fascinating. A human who refuses combat training, but asks detailed questions about supply line logistics. A scholar who studies agricultural distribution, but spends hours reviewing military communication protocols. A poet who married a warrior princess and somehow earned her genuine love rather than just her tolerance. I'm a man of varied interests, Marcus said carefully. Thrace's laugh, was dry as desert wind. "You're a man of secrets. I've lived long enough to recognize another soldier when I see one, no matter how carefully he plays the part of a harmless academic." The words hung in the air between them. Marcus calculated his options, measuring the distance to the exit, assessing whether Thrace was here to expose him or for some other reason. "If you thought I was dangerous," Marcus finally said, "you would have told Emperor Vane years ago." "Dangerous to the Empire?" "No." Thrace settled into a chair, his multiple arms folding with casual precision. "Dangerous to the Empire's enemies?" "I suspect very much so. Which raises an interesting question. Who are you really protecting, Marcus-chan? You, S, or yourselves? Can't it be both?" Thrace studied him for a long moment. "The princess loves you. I've seen her with other suitors before your arrival, strong warriors, accomplished leaders. She respected them, even admired some. But she never looked at any of them the way she looks at you. Like you're the still point in a spinning universe." "I love her too," Marcus said, and meant it completely. "Everything I do is to protect her and her people. Even keeping secrets from her?" Marcus felt the weight of those words. Every night, lying beside Vela, he felt the gap between them widening. She had given him her heart completely, holding nothing back, and he repaid her with carefully constructed lies and encoded messages to a home she didn't truly understand. Some secrets are kept not to deceive but to protect, Marcus said quietly, a convenient philosophy. Thrace stood, preparing to leave. But secrets have a way of emerging at the worst possible moments. When that happens, and it will happen, I hope you're prepared for the consequences. After Thrace left, Marcus sat in the quiet archive for a long time. Then he finished encoding his message and sent it to Earth. Anomaly patterns confirmed. Signature matches historical records. Recommend elevated alert status. Request updated contingency protocols. The response came back within an hour, faster than it should have been possible for simple agricultural data. Acknowledged. Monitor and report. Maintain cover. Hope we're wrong. That night, Marcus and Vela walked through the palace gardens as they did most evenings. It was their time, away from the court's judgment, Kandorian sneering. Here, surrounded by plants from both their worlds growing side by side, they could just be themselves. "You're quiet tonight," Vela observed, her skin showing concerned blue tones. "Just thinking," Marcus said, taking her hand, the upper right one, which she'd once told him was reserved for those closest to her heart. "About what?" "About the horror approaching our galaxy. About the lies I've been telling you. About whether my mission will cost me the only person I've ever truly loved. About how lucky I am," he said instead, and pulled her close. Vela's skin shifted to warm pink, but her warrior's intuition wasn't so easily fooled. "Marcus, if something was wrong, if you were in danger, you would tell me, wouldn't you?" He looked into her eyes, those beautiful multifaceted eyes that could see wavelengths of light he couldn't perceive, and he almost told her everything. Almost confessed that he was Captain Marcus Chun of the Terran Defense Initiative, that he'd been planted here 3 years ago when Earth's deep space monitors first detected the stirrings of an ancient threat, that their entire marriage had begun as an assignment, not almost, but not quite. "If I was in danger," he said carefully, "you would be the first person I'd turn to." It was technically true. When the danger finally revealed itself, she would indeed be the first to know. He just didn't mention that the danger wasn't to him alone, but to everyone in the galaxy. They stood together in the garden as Kristalla's twin moons rose overhead, casting silver light across the crystal city. Marcus held his wife close and tried to memorize this moment of peace, the smell of her skin like warm metal and exotic spices, the sound of her breathing, the way she fit perfectly against him, despite their physiological differences, because somewhere in the dark between galaxies, something ancient and hungry was waking up. And when it arrived, this peaceful garden, this gentle life he'd built, the trust in his wife's eyes, all of it would shatter like crystal struck by a hammer. Marcus had faced impossible odds before. He'd been trained for scenarios that would break most soldiers. But nothing in his training had prepared him for the possibility that saving the galaxy might cost him the only thing he'd ever found worth saving for. Above them, the stars shone cold and distant. And between those stars, drawing closer with each passing day, death was coming. But not yet. For now, there was still time. Time to hold his wife. Time to tend his garden. Time to play the role of the harmless scholar one more day. The galaxy would burn soon enough. Tonight, Marcus Chun allowed himself to simply be a man in love with his wife, walking through a garden under alien moons, pretending that secrets and lies and approaching doom didn't exist. Tomorrow, he would go back to being a soldier preparing for war, but tonight belonged to peace. The alarm shattered the pre-dawn stillness like broken glass. Marcus was awake instantly, his body responding with the reflexes of someone trained for exactly this moment. Beside him, Vela stirred, her skin flashing through confused colors as the emergency klaxons wailed through the palace. "What's happening?" she asked, already moving toward her armor stand. Marcus was already dressed, moving with an efficiency that should have seemed odd for a scholar who usually took his time with morning routines. "We need to get to the war room, now." They ran through corridors, filled with confused nobles and Russian guards. The palace had never sounded the deep space threat alarm before, not in living memory. As they approached the war room, Marcus could hear Emperor Vane's voice booming orders, Prince Dorian shouting questions, and beneath it all, a sound he'd hoped never to hear, the tremor of fear in crystalline voices. The war room was chaos. Holographic displays filled the air, showing sensor data and tactical readouts. Emperor Vane stood at the center, his ancient armor catching the light of 100 warning indicators. General Thrace was already there, his expression grim. Dorian paced like a caged predator, his skin flashing aggressive red. "Report," Emperor Vane commanded as Vela and Marcus entered. Admiral Kess, the fleet commander, stepped forward. Her skin showed pale green, the color of deep fear among their people. Long-range sensors have detected a massive fleet entering our galactic sector. They appeared suddenly, as if they'd been traveling through dimensions we can't perceive. "How many ships?" Vela asked, moving to stand beside her father. "Over 4,000 confirmed. Possibly more." "There?" Kess hesitated, something Marcus had never seen her do. "They're like nothing in our databases." The main hologram shifted, showing images that made even the battle-hardened crystallins step back. The ships, if they could be called ships, were organic monstrosities. Massive structures that pulsed like beating hearts, their hulls covered in what appeared to be living tissue stretched over bone-like frameworks. They moved through space with the writhing motion of deep-sea creatures, leaving trails of darkness behind them that seemed to devoid even light itself. "By the ancient fires," Emperor Vane whispered, his skin showing light shock. "What are they?" "They call themselves the Swarm," came a voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned to see Scholar Meridian, the Empire's oldest historian, shuffling forward. She was so ancient that her metallic skin had turned almost transparent, revealing the crystal lattice beneath. She leaned on a staff made from the bone of some long-extinct creature. "I've only seen them in the Forbidden's archives," Meridian continued, her voice like wind through dead leaves. "The oldest records, from before our empire, before we even had names for the stars. They come from the void between galaxies. They came to our galaxy once before, millions of years ago." "What happened?" Dorian demanded. 27 civilizations were consumed, entire star systems devoured, Their matter converted into more swarm ships, more soldiers. They ate worlds down to the core, harvested stars for energy, and moved on. Only a catastrophic stellar event, a supernova chain reaction, drove them away. And even then, we don't know if they left or simply decided we weren't worth finishing. The war room fell silent, except for the soft chiming of sensor alerts. Marcus felt every eye slowly turning toward him. He'd been standing too still, too calm, while everyone else showed shock and fear. "You knew," General Thrace said quietly. "Didn't you, Marcus Chun?" Marcus met Thrace's gaze steadily. There was no point in pretending anymore. "Yes." Vela's skin flashed through a dozen color shock, betrayal, confusion, anger, all cycling too fast to settle. "You knew about this? About them?" "Earth has been monitoring the swarm for 3 million years, Marcus said, his voice dropping the gentle scholarly tone he'd maintained for so long. His words came crisp and precise now, carrying an authority that made everyone listen, despite their shock. "We've been tracking their movement through the intergalactic void since before your empire existed." "Impossible," Dorian snarled. "Humans only achieved spaceflight 200 years ago." Marcus's expression hardened. "No, humans achieved your space 200 years ago. We found the swarm 7 million years ago when they consumed our home system. What you know as Earth is actually our 8th homeworld. We've been running and preparing ever since." The revelation hit like a physical blow. Emperor Vane's hands clenched into fists. "You've been lying to us, watching us, using us, protecting you," Marcus interrupted, and there was steel in his voice now. "My people have faced extinction 7 times. We learned to recognize the signs. When our deep space monitors detected swarm breeding patterns forming in the void 2 years ago, we knew they were coming to this galaxy. That's why I'm here." Vela stared at him like he was a stranger. "Your marriage to me, was it all a mission?" The question pierced Marcus deeper than any weapon could have. He turned to her, and for a moment the soldier's mask cracked, showing the man beneath. "It started as a mission. I was sent to monitor the situation, to prepare for this. But what I feel for you, what we built together, that's real. That's the most real thing in my life." "Touching," Dorian spat. "But it doesn't change the fact that your people used us as a what? An early warning system?" "As allies," Marcus corrected firmly. "When the swarm arrives, they won't distinguish between human and crystalline, strong or weak. They consume everything. We need to work together, or we all die." General Thrace stepped forward. "The human is right. Personal grievances matter nothing if we're all dead. Marcus, or whoever you really are, what do your people know about fighting these things?" Marcus moved to the tactical display with the confidence of someone who'd been planning for this moment his entire life. "I'm Captain Marcus Chun, Terran Defense Initiative, Special Operations Division. I've been studying the swarm since I was 15. My specialty is xenocidal threat assessment and response coordination." His fingers moved across the holographic controls with practiced skill, pulling up data that made the crystalline military leaders lean in closer. The swarm doesn't negotiate, doesn't retreat, and doesn't feel fear or pain. They exist for one purpose: consumption. They convert all matter into biomass for reproduction. "They're warriors," he continued, pulling up horrifying images of swarm soldiers, "are part biological, part technological. They adapt rapidly to any weapon used against them. Energy weapons? They develop energy-absorbing hides. Kinetic weapons? They grow armor. Chemical weapons? They evolve immunity within hours. Then how do we fight them?" Admiral Kess asked, her tactical mind already working. "By being unpredictable. By hitting them with everything at once, giving them no time to adapt. And by using this," Marcus entered a code into the holographic display, Authorization? Shen Omega 77 Alpha. Requesting Terran Defense Initiative full disclosure. The display flickered and new data flooded in. Ship designs that made the Crystallans gasp. Weapon systems that seemed impossible. Defense networks that dwarfed anything in known space. "This is your true fleet?" Emperor Vane asked, his voice hollow. "All this time, while we thought we were the dominant military power in this region, ... You were," Marcus said, "in conventional warfare. But my people don't prepare for conventional warfare. We prepare for extinction events." A new alarm chimed. Admiral Kess checked her displays, and her skin went completely white. "They're here. The swarm has entered the outer system. They'll reach Crystalla Prime in..." She calculated quickly. 6 days. Maybe 7. Prince Dorian slammed his fist on the tactical table. "Then we fight. We mobilize every ship, call back every fleet. Crystallans don't run from any enemy. Neither do humans," Marcus said quietly. "That's why I'm still here." He turned to the communication station. "I need to contact my fleet. They're already en route. Your fleet is coming here?" Vela asked, and Marcus couldn't read the colors shifting across her skin. "They were always coming here. I've been coordinating staging positions for 2 years." He began entering commands, his fingers moving too fast for most to follow. "Terra Command, this is Captain Shun. Authorization confirmed. The swarm has arrived in Crystallan space. Requesting immediate deployment of Task Force Harmony and full Blade Protocol authorization." The response came within seconds, crackling across impossible distances. "Acknowledged, Captain Shun. Captain Wolf is en route with the Harmony Initiative. ETA 58 hours. Blade Protocol is authorized. All operatives are weapons-free." "Operatives?" General Thrace repeated slowly. "How many of your people have been hiding among us?" Marcus met his gaze steadily. "Enough. We don't abandon our allies, General. We just don't advertise our preparations." The war room erupted in overlapping conversations. Dorian accused humans of manipulating the Empire. Admiral Kess demanded technical specifications of human weapons. Emperor Vane tried to restore order. Through it all, Vela stood silent, staring at Marcus like she was seeing him for the first time. Scholar Meridian tapped her staff on the floor, the sound cutting through the chaos. "Fighting among ourselves accomplishes nothing. The swarm approaches. We have less than a week to prepare." "Captain Shun," she emphasized his rank, "what do you need from us?" Marcus straightened, shifting fully into his role as a military commander. The gentle scholar was gone, replaced by someone who trained his entire life for this moment. "I need complete tactical integration between Crystallan and Terran forces. I need access to your manufacturing facilities to produce specific weapon types. And I need every ship you have ready to fight in a coordinated assault. You expect us to follow human battle plans?" Dorian demanded. "I expect you to follow plans that work," Marcus replied sharply. "My people have survived the swarm before." "Has yours?" Before Dorian could respond, the holographic display chimed with an incoming message. A woman's face appeared human, with sharp features and silver hair, despite appearing young. Her uniform bore insignia that the Crystallans didn't recognize, but Marcus clearly did. "Captain Shun," the woman said. "Captain Serena Wolf, TDI First Fleet. Good to see you're still alive. The Harmony Initiative is ahead of schedule. We'll reach Crystallan space in 48 hours. I trust you've briefed our hosts on the situation?" "Currently briefing, Captain," Marcus replied. Serena's smile was sharp. "Then I'll see you soon. Try not to blow your cover any more than you already have." Wolf out. The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Vela finally spoke, her voice tight with controlled emotion. You told me you were a simple diplomat, a scholar. You grew gardens and wrote poetry, and I believed," her voice cracked slightly, "I believed that was who you were." Marcus turned to her, and everyone in the room could see the pain in his eyes. "I do grow gardens. I do write poetry. Those weren't lies, Vela. I just ... also happen to be very good at killing things that threaten people I love. So, which is real?" She demanded. "The gentle husband I've spent 3 years with, or Captain Shun of the Terran Defense Initiative?" "Both." Marcus took a step toward her, then stopped when her skin flashed warning red. "I never lied about loving you. Everything else, the mission, the secrets, the preparations, that was to protect you. To protect all of this, I lying to me every day. By carrying a burden so you wouldn't have to. So you could live without the weight of knowing what was coming." His voice dropped. "I've seen what the swarm does, Vela. I've studied the records of the worlds they've consumed. I've watched simulation after simulation of how this battle might go. Most of them end with everyone dead. I didn't want you to carry that knowledge. I wanted you to have 3 years of peace before." "Before what?" "Before I learned my husband was a stranger. Before the galaxy burned," Marcus said softly. The raw honesty in his voice cut through the anger. Vela's skin shifted through complex patterns of emotion, hurt, betrayal, fear, and beneath it all, something that looked like understanding. Emperor Vane cleared his throat, drawing attention back to the immediate crisis. "Personal matters can be resolved later. Captain Shun, you said your people have fought the swarm before. Have you ever won?" Marcus hesitated, and that hesitation told them everything. "We've survived. Winning isn't really possible. You hurt them enough that they decide you're not worth the resources, and they move on. That's the best case scenario. And worst case?" General Thrace asked. "They consume this entire galaxy, convert all matter into more swarm ships, and move on to the next galaxy. In 10,000 years, they'll have eaten their way across the universe. Unless we stop them here." "How?" Admiral Kess demanded. "You said they adapt to every weapon." "I said they adapt to weapons they've seen before." Marcus pulled up new schematics on the display. "Earth's entire defensive doctrine is based on constant innovation. We've been developing weapons specifically designed never to be used until the swarm shows up. Technologies they've never encountered, tactics they can't predict. We hit them with everything at once: conventional weapons, exotic matter weapons, dimensional disruption fields, quantum entanglement bombs, and a few things we don't have names for yet." He zoomed out to show the wider tactical situation. "The swarm always operates the same way. They send their main fleet to consume the primary population centers, while smaller groups harvest resources from outlying systems. They expect resistance to be disorganized, each species or world fighting independently. That's what happened in every galaxy they've consumed before. But this time will be different," General Thrace said, understanding dawning. "Because humanity has been preparing. You've been seeding operatives throughout the galaxy, building alliances, positioning resources." "For 3 million years," Marcus confirmed. "My posting here wasn't random. There are operatives in every major power in this sector. When the swarm arrives, they won't face scattered resistance. They'll face a coordinated defense, unlike anything they've encountered before. Will it be enough?" Emperor Vane asked. Marcus met the Emperor's gaze honestly. "I don't know, but it's the best chance we've ever had." Another alarm sounded. The swarm fleet had begun accelerating. They would reach the outer colonies even sooner than predicted. "We're out of time for debates," Marcus said, his voice carrying absolute authority now. "Emperor Vane, I need your answer. Will Kristalla fight beside Earth? Will you trust me to coordinate our defenses, despite the secrets I've kept?" The Emperor looked at his daughter. Vela's skin was still cycling through conflicted colors, but she met her father's gaze steadily. "He lied to us," Vela said slowly. "But he did it to protect us. And right now, we need his expertise more than we need our pride." She turned to Marcus. "I don't know if I can forgive you, but I trust you to save our people." It wasn't absolution, but it was enough. Emperor Vane nodded slowly. "Very well, Captain Shun. Kristalla accepts your alliance. Our fleets will follow your command. But when this is over, if we survive, you and I will have words about honesty and respect." "Understood." "Your Majesty." Marcus turned back to the tactical displays. His mind already working through battle plans he'd rehearsed 1,000 times. "General Thrace, I need you to coordinate with the manufacturing centers. Admiral Kess, begin pulling back all outlying fleets to defensive positions around Kristalla Prime. We're going to make our stand here." As the room burst into organized activity, Marcus allowed himself one glance at Vela. She was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read, seeing him truly for the first time. Seeing the soldier beneath the scholar's disguise, he wanted to go to her, to explain everything, to make her understand. But there wasn't time. The swarm was coming, and with them came the very real possibility that he would fail, that his 3 million years of preparation wouldn't be enough, that everyone he'd grown to love would die screaming as they were consumed by the void. Captain Marcus Chun, scholar and soldier, gardener and warrior, turned back to his battle plans and prepared to face the nightmare he'd been running from his entire life. The swarm was coming, and for the first time in human history, they weren't running away. They were going to fight.